There are many places on Earth that make us feel like we're in paradise. But there is one country where wild nature blends so intensely with ancient tribal traditions that many visitors find themselves caught up in a world full of charms and temptations that are difficult to resist. Get ready to learn more about Zimbabwe, one of the wildest and most enigmatic countries on the planet, but also one of the most fascinating. Wild like its recent history, with moments as extreme as they are absurd, when a wife's dowry was worth up to $3 trillion in local currency. A tribal tradition known as Lobola is still alive today, whereby if you have money or enough cows, you can have not one, but up to 10 wives. An African country full of unbelievable oddities, like a natural pool on the edge of a 100-meter deep abyss known as the Devil's Pool. Or villages where people still believe that witch doctors can raise the dead, not to return them to their families, but to turn them into zombies and force them to work as slaves. A nation where the charms go beyond nature, with single women who feel a special attraction to Western tourists, isolated tribes that still hunt lions as a rite of passage, and VIP cemeteries where only national heroes can be buried. A region that combines wonders such as natural parks, where you can walk among lions and hippos, or one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, Victoria Falls, considered by many to be the most beautiful on the planet. But it also hides dark realities, such as underground cities where gold is traded, ghost towns that look like something out of post-apocalyptic movies like Mad Max, and having suffered the most brutal economic hell ever experienced, with $100 trillion bills that were worth less than toilet paper. Find out why in this country you can sleep surrounded by lions, negotiate with several wives in exchange for cows, and how they came to print the banknote with the most zeros in history in this new video from Uncensored World. Let's get started. In the heart of southern Africa lies Zimbabwe, a nation that, despite its extreme challenges, offers unparalleled cultural and natural wealth. This country is world-renowned for the majestic Victoria Falls, considered one of the 7 most important natural wonders of the world, according to UNESCO. However, Zimbabwe's beauty is not limited to these impressive waterfalls. Its diverse geography, marked by vast plains, rugged hills, and mighty rivers, is home to extraordinary natural parks where visitors can walk alongside the fiercest predators in their natural habitat. This unique experience is made possible by the country's conservation efforts, but also by its remote location, which has allowed these ecosystems to be preserved in their purest form, far from human intervention. Zimbabwe shares borders with Zambia to the north, Mozambique to the east, South Africa to the south, and Botswana to the west. Its strategic location in the heart of Africa makes it a crossroads for diverse cultures and traditions. Some of these are so remote and unexplored that they have preserved unique rituals and customs, which are often surprising and controversial, offering a fascinating insight into the country's rich cultural heritage. The country has an area of approximately 390,000 square kilometers, similar in size to Paraguay in South America. Despite its vast territory, the country is home to an estimated population of over 16 million, resulting in a population density of around 43 people per square kilometer. This figure places Zimbabwe in a relatively low density range, especially when compared to other African countries such as Nigeria or Rwanda, with densities exceeding 400 inhabitants per square kilometer. This more balanced distribution of the population in Zimbabwe allows both urban and rural areas to develop in a more spacious manner, although the main cities such as Harare and Bulawayo are home to a significant portion of the population. We will briefly review the history of Zimbabwe to help you understand the various reasons that led its rulers to print 100 trillion local dollar bills, ending with an explanation of how much they are and were willing to pay for a wife in Zimbabwe, and why many men prefer to have 10. The name Zimbabwe is derived from the word Zimbabwe, which in the Shona language, one of the most widely spoken languages in the country, means stone house, or Great Stone House. This word, and with it the name of the country, refers to the impressive ruins of Great Zimbabwe, an impressive stone complex that was the heart of a powerful kingdom between the 11th and 15th centuries. This archaeological site is a testament to an advanced civilization that prospered through trade with regions as far away as China and Persia, exchanging valuable goods such as gold, ivory, and copper. The majestic ruins of Great Zimbabwe still exist and can be visited today. They are located in southeastern Zimbabwe, near the city of Masvingo. This ancient complex is one of the country's main tourist attractions and is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Within the site, one of the most impressive features is the Great Enclosure, a monumental structure that includes stone walls reaching up to 11 meters high. This is the largest pre-colonial masonry structure in Africa, and its exact function remains a subject of debate among archaeologists and historians. Some believe it may have been a royal residence, while others consider it a ceremonial or power center. Most surprising is that these enormous stone walls, up to 11 meters high and built without mortar, were erected without the use of metal tools or modern machinery, raising questions about the engineering techniques and knowledge of this civilization, which are still poorly understood. Great Zimbabwe was the capital of a flourishing kingdom that was home to up to 17,000 people at its peak, making it one of the largest cities in Africa at the time. Despite its decline in the late 15th century, the ruins remain a symbol of the ingenuity and resilience of indigenous African peoples, challenging colonial prejudices about the capabilities of these civilizations. Taking these settlers into account, Zimbabwe's modern history, like that of many African countries, is marked by British colonization when the country was better known as Rhodesia. This is largely due to British colonial influence, which left English as the official language and Christianity as the predominant religion. However, local languages such as Shona and Ndebele are also widely spoken in Zimbabwe, and traditional spiritual practices such as ancestor worship, shamanistic rituals, and beliefs in supernatural forces still survive in many rural areas. As you will see in the video, some of these beliefs include popular notions about witchcraft, zombies, and magic, which are part of the collective imagination in certain regions of the country and coexist with modern religions. This cultural richness, marked by the blending of European and ancestral influences, is deeply linked to its recent history. After a long and painful struggle for independence, Zimbabwe became a sovereign nation in 1980, beginning a new chapter in which local traditions began to regain visibility, while national identity was rebuilt on the traces of the colonial past. But not everything in the country's recent history has been positive. Since the 2000s, Zimbabwe has been plunged into one of the worst economic crises of the modern era, marked by rampant hyperinflation, shortages of basic goods, and a mass exodus of its population. In this country, hyperinflation reached such astronomical levels that the government was forced to print banknotes worth up to 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollars. We will now explore this reality in more detail, so that you can easily understand the causes, context, and consequences that led the country to this unprecedented economic collapse. It all began in the late 1990s, when the Zimbabwean government, led by President Robert Mugabe, initiated a series of economic and social measures that ended up plunging the country into a deep crisis. One of the most controversial measures was the land reform that took place in 2000, in which land was expropriated from white farmers and handed over to black families. The intention was possibly good, but there was a major problem. The new owners of this land had no agricultural experience or technical support. Although the measure was intended to redress decades of inequality, its chaotic implementation led to a sharp decline in agricultural production, especially in tobacco and maize, two of the main pillars of Zimbabwe's economy. With less food produced within the country and insufficient exports, the government began to rely increasingly on printed money to finance public spending. As a result, instead of seeking investment or international aid, The solution adopted was to print large amounts of money to pay salaries, subsidies, and internal debts. This triggered an economic phenomenon known as hyperinflation, which occurs when prices rise so rapidly and uncontrollably that money loses almost all its value. To understand this easily, if there is suddenly a lot more money in circulation, but the amount of products available remains the same, then each banknote is worth less, and more banknotes are needed to buy each product. In this way, within a few weeks, a loaf of bread could cost 5, 10, or even 100 times more, to the point where if a loaf of bread once cost 100 Zimbabwean dollars, over time, that same loaf of bread came to cost even more than $1 million. The impact was devastating. Many people needed wheelbarrows full of banknotes to buy basic goods such as bread, milk, or rice, and a lifetime savings were not even enough for a single meal. In the case of Zimbabwe, this hyperinflation reached such extreme levels that it became one of the worst in modern history. To give you an idea, at its peak, prices doubled every 24 hours. In 2008, inflation reached an estimated 80 billion% per year. The government printed banknotes with absurd values. Banknotes with a world record of no less than 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollars. As a result, it was common to see people carrying bags full of banknotes just to buy basic goods such as eggs or bread, to the point where a loaf of bread could cost several $1 million, and it was literally cheaper to use money as toilet paper than to try to buy anything with it. In this country, due to the ancestral tradition of Lobola, it was, and still is, possible to buy wives with money, which is why in Zimbabwe, wives were bought for billions of local dollars at that time. You will soon discover the reality of Lobola and understand that, in addition to billions, a wife could and can be bought in this country in exchange for cows, goats, chickens, and other material goods. But even more surprising than this tradition is the fact that many men not only have or want one wife, but 10, for various reasons that you will discover at the end of this video. Due to this hyperinflation, the consequences were devastating for the people of Zimbabwe. For most of them, their life savings disappeared overnight. Salaries became worthless shortly after being paid. The healthcare system collapsed, schools closed, and millions of people left the country seeking refuge in South Africa, Botswana, or the United Kingdom. The national currency lost so much value that in 2009 it was officially abandoned and replaced by foreign currencies such as the US dollar and the South African rand. That period left a deep mark on Zimbabwe's recent history. Although in recent years the country has tried to regain its stability, the specter of hyperinflation remains present in the collective memory. At this point, we would like to ask you, how much would you be willing to pay to win over the woman or man of your dreams? What is the most absurd thing you would buy with $100 trillion bill? What would you do if your money lost its value in a matter of hours? We'd love to read your comments, and as you know, it's the best way you can help us keep working every week to bring you videos like this one, so thank you. In Zimbabwe today, many shops still display prices in several currencies, and much of the economy is cash-based or bartered, especially in rural areas. The experience of what happened in Zimbabwe is studied around the world as an extreme example of what happens when control of the economy is lost and confidence in money collapses. This situation devastated the economy and led many citizens to seek better opportunities abroad. Mass emigration, especially of men in search of employment, also altered the country's demographics. This caused a significant imbalance between the number of women and men in some areas, resulting in a high number of single women. Many of them were particularly interested in meeting foreigners, not only out of curiosity about other cultures, but also in the hope of finding new opportunities that would allow them to transform their reality and build a different future. This demographic imbalance is evident in major cities such as Harare and Bulawayo, as well as in certain rural areas. Despite its cultural and natural wealth, this country is not one of the most visited tourist destinations by foreigners, which means that, apart from this reality, interactions with visitors from abroad are more authentic and special. This becomes a unique opportunity for tourists seeking a genuine connection with local people, as the presence of visitors from other parts of the world becomes a rare and appreciated possibility. In addition, the fact that most of the population speaks English as an official language facilitates communication and the creation of closer ties. Returning to the economic crisis, in addition to marked demographic differences and extreme social realities, it has also fostered hidden activities such as illegal gold mining and the reality of underground cities. In Zimbabwe, several areas such as Kwekwe, Gaika, and Wozoli have become places where illegal gold mining has given rise to what are known as underground cities. These underground tunnels sometimes extend to depths of more than 1.5 miles, dug without any planning or safety measures. In Kwekwe, for example, these excavations have affected soil stability and put surface structures at risk. Inside these underground cities, living conditions are extremely precarious and dangerous. The miners, known locally as Makorokoza, work without adequate equipment, using rudimentary tools to extract gold. In addition, the lack of ventilation in the tunnels increases the likelihood of toxic gas poisoning. This illegal mining not only endangers the lives of workers, but also has a serious environmental impact, polluting water sources and degrading the soil. The absence of regulation on these issues in Zimbabwe allows these activities to continue unchecked, intensifying economic and social problems in the affected communities. But in addition to these underground cities, as a result of the economic crisis, several cities have become ghost towns. Places like Redcliffe and Chiweshe, once industrial and mining centers, are now marked by abandonment and desolation. These crumbling cities, with their rusted factories and empty buildings, look like something out of post-apocalyptic films such as Mad Max or The Road, where human life seems to have disappeared almost entirely, leaving only traces of what were once centers of activity and prosperity. An interesting curiosity is that in some of these ghost towns, the few remaining residents have begun to build new makeshift communities in the ruins, using recycled materials and adapting to the reality of scarcity. These realities underscore how the crisis has profoundly transformed Zimbabwe's urban landscape, creating an atmosphere reminiscent of dystopian worlds, where survival has become a daily struggle, and the scars of economic collapse are visible in every corner. This reality contrasts sharply with natural parks, where people can walk alongside the most dangerous predators, revealing a country where the wildest nature is often more humane than man's own inventions or laws. In Zimbabwe, this nature remains a wild spectacle, but at the same time, impressive and accessible, especially in its national parks, where tourists can experience one of the few places in the world where you can walk alongside the most feared predators on Earth. One such place is Hwange National Park, located in the northwest of the country, famous for its large elephant population, one of the biggest attractions for tourists. In addition, Hwange is home to a wide variety of wildlife, including lions, leopards, hyenas, and buffalo, making it an ideal place for those seeking an authentic safari experience. But what makes this experience in Hwange unique is the real possibility of walking alongside these feared predators, accompanied by local guides who know the behavior of the animals and the dynamics of the ecosystem. This is another extreme and wild reality of this country, as there are not many places in the world where you can sleep surrounded by lions or negotiate 1 or even 10 wives for money or cows, as you will later discover. Returning to the lions, although it may sound risky, these walks are carried out under strict safety rules and with expert guides who have worked in the park for years. This activity, which in other countries might seem dangerous or prohibited, has become one of the most exciting offers for tourists who want to feel the adrenaline rush of being so close to animals in their natural habitat. Another of the most amazing parks in this regard in Zimbabwe is Zambezi National Park, where, in addition to lions and elephants, visitors can walk close to hippos and even encounter crocodiles in the waters of the wild Zambezi River. An interesting fact is that in some of these parks, visitors have the opportunity to sleep under the stars, close to the wildlife, in mobile camps that allow them to be even closer to nature. Thinking about feared predators and authentic realities, it is fascinating to learn about one of the most dangerous and controversial initiation rituals that still persist in some communities in Zimbabwe. In some tribes, especially among young people from the Shona and Ndebele cultures, lion hunting is a rite of passage that marks the transition from adolescence to adulthood. This ritual, which traditionally involved young men away from home, required the boys to venture into the savannah and hunt one of the continent's most fearsome predators. Although this ritual is now largely obsolete due to conservation laws and growing concern for the protection of lions, it is still remembered as an ancestral tradition that represented courage and strength and may still be practiced in remote parts of the country. In addition to lion hunting, these tribes perform other highly controversial initiation ceremonies. Among them, ceremonies for men include teachings on leadership, endurance, and responsibilities within the community, while for women, rituals often revolve around fertility, intimate relationships, and gender roles. These rituals are seen as fundamental to ensuring that young people understand their place in society, and although some of them are becoming less common, they remain an essential part of the cultural identity of these tribes. However, these cultures are also marked by much more controversial traditions, such as Lobola, the custom of paying for a bride with animals such as cows, goats, or chickens, but also with money and material goods, and the practice of polygamy, with surprising realities in some communities, such as allowing men to have up to 10 wives, which generates debate both within Zimbabwe and beyond its borders. We will explore these realities in more detail shortly, but first, it is interesting to learn about another unique aspect of Zimbabwe. VIP cemeteries, exclusive cemeteries that only admit heroes. In Zimbabwe, there is a cemetery full of symbolism known as the National Heroes Acre, located in Harare. You may have thought that many of the young people who participated in rituals such as lion hunting could be considered heroes within their own communities and buried here. But no, the National Heroes Acre is a symbol of the nation's collective memory, intended solely to honor those who have made great sacrifices for their country. This cemetery is reserved exclusively for those considered national heroes, mainly fighters for Zimbabwe's independence. It is a place where political and military figures of great importance to the country's history rest, a place of honor that reflects the deep respect for those who have dedicated their lives to the struggle for freedom and sovereignty in this fascinating country. Probably the main reason for much of the world's fascination with Zimbabwe has a name: Victoria Falls. Considered by many to be one of the most impressive natural wonders on the planet, these waterfalls are not only captivating because of their immensity, but also because of their raw power and wild appearance. It is such an indomitable spectacle that the sound of the water can be heard from a distance of more than 40 kilometers. Because of all this, UNESCO declared them a World Heritage Site, highlighting their exceptional value in terms of both geology and landscape. Located on the border between Zimbabwe and Zambia, Victoria Falls is formed when the majestic Zambezi River, the fourth longest river in Africa, plunges over a fault in the earth, creating a curtain of water that stretches over 1,700 meters wide and falls from a height of over 100 meters. They are not the highest waterfalls in the world, nor are they the widest, but they do hold a record that makes them unique. They are the largest waterfall on the planet when considering their combined height and width. The mist generated by the impact of the water against the abyss is so dense that it gives rise to its traditional name in the Lozi language, Mosi Oa Tunya, which means the smoke that thunders. This mist rises hundreds of meters above the ground and feeds an ecosystem of its own around the gorge, with lush vegetation that remains moist throughout the year, even in the driest seasons. In a country where the forces of nature seem to have a voice of their own, as in the case of Mosi Oa Tunya, the smoke that thunders, a permanent roar from Victoria Falls, it is not surprising that many communities in Zimbabwe keep alive beliefs that date back to times long before European colonization. long before the arrival of Christianity, imposed by British missionaries during the 19th century. The indigenous peoples already believed in spirits, ancestral energies, and invisible manifestations that governed life, death, and everything in between. In many rural villages, especially among the Shona and Ndebele peoples you are getting to know, animism remains present. The idea that natural elements, rivers, trees, mountains, storms, are not only alive but possess spirits that must be respected. In this context, phenomena such as the constant mist of the Mosi Oa Tunya waterfalls are interpreted not only scientifically, but also spiritually. For many, this pillar of smoke that rises without fire is a sign that invisible, possibly ancestral forces inhabit and protect this sacred place. These beliefs also give rise to much darker manifestations, such as witchcraft and the existence of rural zombies. Although in the Western mind the term zombie is usually associated with horror movies, in several regions of southern Africa, it has a very different meaning. Some communities believe that certain witch doctors have the power to resurrect the dead, not as violent corpses, but as invisible slaves, used to work on secret tasks or punish enemies. These zombies, according to belief, are controlled by dark rituals and magic potions and have no will of their own. In rural areas of Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Mozambique, even today there are people who avoid going out at night for fear of encountering these entities, and it is not uncommon for some burials to be carried out with occult rituals to prevent the deceased from returning. In some villages, heavy stones are placed on graves, or bodies are buried face down to make resurrection more difficult. Although this is not a universal belief, it is widespread among sectors of the population with strong spiritual traditions, especially in places where health and education systems have not completely replaced the ancestral worldview. There are even documented cases in which missing persons have reappeared years later, claiming to have been held captive by witch doctors, or resurrected as zombies, which has further fueled these beliefs. On several occasions, the Zimbabwean police have even had to intervene to protect individuals accused of witchcraft by their own communities, and there have even been reports of lynchings related to these beliefs. Returning to Victoria Falls, it is important to know that both Zimbabwe and Zambia share this natural treasure, although visitors tend to divide themselves between the two countries, depending on what they want to experience. From the Zimbabwean side, you have the most panoramic and complete views of the falls, thanks to trails that run along the entire front of the cliff. From Zambia, on the other hand, you can access certain unique and also extremely dangerous experiences. One of the most famous and feared is the so-called Devil's Pool, considered the most dangerous natural swimming pool on the planet. This impressive pool is formed naturally right on the edge of the abyss when the water level of the Zambezi is low enough, between August and January, to allow a calm pool to form before the most extreme and wild precipice, due to having the largest and most powerful flow on the planet. In the Devil's Pool, just a few inches from the 100-meter drop, every year tourists from all over the world dive in, swim, and take photos and selfies with the roaring gorge behind them. Although Devil's Pool is officially located in Zambian territory, it is less than 100 meters from the Zimbabwean border, in an area where both countries share tourist access to the falls. In fact, many of the best views of this natural pool are from the Zimbabwean side, which also has the closest walkways and viewpoints to the abyss. Therefore, it is not surprising that travelers visiting Zimbabwe also have easy access to this experience, crossing the border to literally immerse themselves in one of the most extreme areas of the African continent. To access this extreme experience, visitors must swim or wade across the Zambezi River's strong currents, always under the supervision of experienced local guides. It is therefore mandatory to hire a guided tour, as the guides know the safe routes perfectly and check that the river's flow is not too strong. But even so, the risks are high. Although Devil's Pool, located right on the edge of the majestic Victoria Falls, is world famous for its danger, there are no official records of deaths occurring during authorized guided tours. However, it is believed that undocumented tragedies may have occurred, especially among reckless visitors who access the area outside of organized tours. The only recorded fatality took place in 2009, when a Zimbabwean tour guide lost his life while trying to rescue a visitor who was in danger. On the edge of the abyss, tourists literally peer inches away from a drop of more than 100 meters, and it is not uncommon for guides to hold them by the ankles as they try to capture the infamous perfect photo. But the danger lies not only in the height, but also in the strength of the current. Although in the low season the water level allows access to the pool, any sudden change in the flow can generate unexpected currents that sweep the unwary into the void. In addition, the rocky bottom of this natural pool is not without its risks, with sharp and slippery stones. As for the price, visiting the Devil's Pool is not free. Authorized tours, which include transportation to the island and the services of specialized guides, usually cost between $50 and $100. Many consider this a fair price for the exclusivity of the experience and for its apparent safety. This natural wonder remains one of the most iconic spots in southern Africa. While some contemplate its majesty from the safe viewpoints of Victoria Falls National Park in Zimbabwe, others decide to face the force of nature at the Devil's Pool. In any case, Victoria Falls leaves no one indifferent. A spectacle of water, stone, and life that reminds humans how small their existence can be in the face of the colossi of the natural world. But perhaps the tradition that most baffles and leaves a mark on those who delve into the culture of this country is a deeply rooted ancestral practice: Lobola. Also known as bride price, Lobola consists of the payment of compensation, originally in the form of livestock, by the man and his family to the family of the woman he wishes to marry. This custom is not only a gesture of respect, but also functions as a social and economic pact between clans. The history of Lobola becomes absurd when combined with the hyperinflation that Zimbabwe has experienced and the economic worthlessness of its currency. This is how what could be recognized as the largest dowry ever paid in the history of the planet came about. Of course, those dollars were Zimbabwean dollars, and as you may already know, they were worth less than toilet paper. This story took place in 2008 or 2009, when inflation reached such ridiculous levels that a loaf of bread could cost more than a house a few hours later. In that economic chaos, a man in the city of Bulawayo paid his future wife's dowry with a sum that went down in the annals of absurdity: 3 trillion Zimbabwean dollars. Yes, 3 billion. The most incredible thing is that this amount was barely enough to cover a few kilos of rice, some chickens, and transportation for the father-in-law to the ceremony. But, at least on paper, it was possibly the most expensive dowry ever paid in the history of humanity. And it wasn't the only one. During those years, it was normal to see families asking for up to 500 billion for a daughter, because after all, everyone was a billionaire, and no one had anything. Something that few people know is that in Zimbabwe, contrary to what many imagine, Lobola is not limited to rural tribes or low-education contexts. Even in urban settings and among families with university degrees, this practice continues to be common, although adapted to modern times. Today, while livestock remains a symbol of prestige, it is increasingly common for the dowry to include cash, appliances, vehicles, or even land. One of the most striking aspects of Lobola in Zimbabwe is its variability. There is no fixed value, and its calculation can depend on various factors: the bride's level of education, her beauty, whether she has had children, whether she is a virgin, her ability to do housework, and even the reputation or economic power of her family. The higher the woman's education or status, the higher the Lobola demanded. In certain regions, for example, it is considered appropriate to offer up to a dozen cows or their equivalent in cash for a bride considered ideal. This traditional transaction has multiple interpretations. For many, it is a way of honoring the woman's family for raising her. For others, it is a contract that guarantees a certain commitment from the man to his partner. However, there are also critical voices that denounce how, in some cases, it becomes a form of purchasing the woman, fueling power imbalances within the marriage. But if there is an even more controversial aspect linked to Lobola in Zimbabwe, it is its role in polygamy. In many traditional communities, a man who demonstrates solvency by owning numerous cows or wealth can take more than one wife. And we are not talking about 2 or 3. There are areas of the country where some men have up to 10 wives. In this sense, Lobola acts as a filter. Only those who can pay multiple dowries have the right to keep several wives. Polygamy is particularly common among members of certain tribes, such as the Shona and Ndebele, 2 of Zimbabwe's largest and most traditional ethnic groups. In these cultures, having multiple wives is not only a matter of status or desire, but also an economic and social strategy. In rural areas where life depends on agriculture, livestock, and manual labor, having many wives, and therefore many children, means more hands available to work and greater security for the family clan. Furthermore, in a country where the female population has historically been larger and resources scarce, polygamy has also been interpreted as a practical solution. It offers stability to women who would otherwise remain single and ensures that all women are integrated into family structures that can support them. Although this logic responds to very specific realities in rural areas, it clashes with contemporary values of equality and individual rights. Today, Lobola and polygamy continue to be topics of debate within the country. While many women defend the tradition as a form of social recognition, others see it as an obstacle to their autonomy. The truth is that both Lobola and multiple marriages remain legally permitted in Zimbabwe, especially in environments where tribal customary law carries more weight than modern civil laws. Thus, while monogamy and civil unions are becoming more common in major cities such as Harare and Bulawayo, the reality is quite different in rural areas of the country. A 1,000-year-old tradition in which love, respect, and negotiation come after the delivery of cows, and where the number of wives a man can have is not decided by his heart, but by the number of cattle in his corral. What do you think about all this? Do you think a man should have the right to have several wives if he can support them? Would you pay a dowry of cows or thousands of dollars for love? Or would you rather remain single? And thinking about how wild this country is, would you swim in the world's most dangerous natural pool, on the edge of an abyss? Would you dare to walk among lions? We'd love to read your comments, and if you've made it this far, we'd appreciate a like. Thank you. We're coming to the end of this fascinating tour of Zimbabwe, but before we say goodbye, we want to help you discover how to experience this African paradise for yourself with an incentive you may not have known about. This country is considered one of the cheapest in the world. Add to that the warmth of its people, its vibrant culture, and its abundant nature, and Zimbabwe becomes a place that is not just visited, it is experienced. Zimbabwe has several international airports, the most important being Robert Gabriel Mugabe International Airport in Harare, its capital. It is also very common to fly directly to Victoria Falls, especially if you are coming from neighboring countries such as South Africa, Botswana, or Zambia. From Johannesburg, South Africa, there are regular and affordable flights connecting to the main tourist destinations in Zimbabwe in less than 2 hours. Most visitors need a visa, although this can be easily obtained upon arrival in the country or online before traveling. There are different types, but for a standard tourist trip, a single-entry visa, valid for 30 days, is usually processed. The price is around $40, although it is always advisable to check depending on your country of origin. English is widely spoken in cities, tourist centers, and all tourism-related services, so communication is not usually a problem for many travelers. Something that few people know but all visitors discover is that Zimbabwe is considered one of the cheapest countries in the world for travelers. In this country, the cost of living is low compared to most tourist destinations, allowing you to enjoy unique experiences without a large budget. For example, a full dinner for 2 at a local restaurant usually costs less than $10, while a double room in a comfortable and safe hotel can cost around $30 per night. A guided walking tour of the savannah or a safari experience can be had for less than $50 per person, depending on the park and the services included. In cities such as Harare and Bulawayo, there is public transportation. But to get around the main tourist destinations, it is recommended to rent a four-wheel drive vehicle, or better yet, hire private transportation, especially if traveling to rural areas or nature reserves. In general, Zimbabwe is safe for tourists, especially in the most visited areas such as Victoria Falls, Hwange, and Kariba. The people are generally friendly, hospitable, and accustomed to dealing with foreigners. However, as anywhere else, basic precautions are recommended. Do not walk alone in unfamiliar areas at night. Avoid displaying valuables, and beware of pickpockets in markets or crowded areas. One of the most spectacular sights in the country is Victoria Falls, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. The power of the water falling from over 100 meters, the permanent rainbow formed by the mist, and the thunderous roar of the Zambezi will make you feel tiny in the face of the force of nature. National parks such as Hwange, Zambezi, and Matobo offer walking and vehicle safari experiences in a virtually untouched environment. In these areas, tourism is not only a vital source of income for local communities, but also promotes conservation and respect for traditions. Sustainable tourism initiatives allow indigenous cultures to remain alive and proud while you explore the savannah or share tribal dances around a campfire. As you have seen, Zimbabwe is a country full of contrasts and surprises, where you can find majestic waterfalls, ancient rituals, unforgettable safaris, and even legends about zombies and hidden cities. It is a destination for those seeking adventure, authenticity, and real emotions, a place where time seems to stand still, nature rules, and the traveler is more than a spectator. They are part of history. At Uncensored World, we hope that this tour of Zimbabwe has been as exciting for you as it has been for us. If you enjoyed this video and you're not yet subscribed, don't wait any longer and subscribe now so you don't miss out on the fascinating videos we make every week. Videos like this one, which you can enjoy now to discover one of the most fascinating corners of the planet. Don't miss out and discover the wonders this place has to offer.